A third-grade teacher counted 59 days. 59 days of the same faded blue denim jacket on the same shrinking boy. And on day 59, when 9-year-old Mason Riley finally unzipped that jacket in an empty classroom, what she found underneath wasn't just bruises. It was a map of 7 months of torture, finger-shaped, belt-shaped, layered in purple and yellow and green, on a child who weighed 52 pounds and whispered 7 words that would bring 139 Hell's Angels roaring into an elementary school parking lot before sundown. Please don't make me go back there. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. We want to see just how far Mason's story reaches. Now, let's begin. Mason Riley stopped breathing the moment Miss Bradley asked him to stay after class. Not literally, but the air caught somewhere between his chest and his throat and just held there, the way it always did when an adult said his name with that careful tone, that gentle tone, the one that meant something was coming and it probably wasn't good. He sat at his desk in room 108 at Pinecrest Elementary and pulled his sleeves down over his hands. He didn't even realize he was doing it anymore. It was automatic, like blinking, like flinching when someone raised their hand too fast. The other kids had filed out 3 minutes ago. The hallway was loud with their voices, their laughter, their backpacks bumping against walls. Normal sounds. Sounds that belonged to kids who went home to refrigerators full of food and bedrooms with actual beds. Mason sat very still and watched the door. Miss Bradley closed it, softly. Then she turned around and looked at him with those green eyes that had been watching him. He knew she'd been watching him weeks now. Mason, her voice was gentle. You're not in trouble. He didn't believe her. He'd learned a long time ago that when adults said you weren't in trouble, trouble was exactly what was coming. I just need you to trust me, she said. She pulled a chair over and sat down so her face was level with his, close enough that he could see she'd been crying recently. Not now, earlier. Her eyes were slightly red around the edges. Can you show me what's under the jacket? His heart slammed against his ribs. What? The jacket, Mason. You've worn it every single day since January, even when it was 70 degrees outside last week, even during gym, even when the other kids were in t-shirts. She paused. I've been counting. 59 days. He stared at his desk. There was a scratch in the wood shaped like a lightning bolt. He'd memorized it. He'd memorized everything in this room because it was the only place in his life where nobody hit him. It's my favorite jacket, he said. Mason, I just like it. Sweetheart, I'm not asking because I care about the jacket. I'm asking because I care about you. Something cracked inside his chest when she said that. A tiny fracture in the wall he'd been building for 7 months. He swallowed hard and blinked fast because he was not going to cry. He was 9. He was the oldest. Lily and Noah needed him to be strong. If he fell apart, who would take the hits for Noah when Greg got angry at night? Who would sneak food from the kitchen when Pamela forgot to feed them? Who would tell Lily it was going to be okay when the garage door locked from the outside and the temperature dropped and all 3 of them huddled on those thin mattresses and listened to Greg and Pamela laughing upstairs? Please don't call them, Mason whispered. Miss Bradley's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Something hardened. Call who? Greg and Pamela, please. If you call, they'll know I told. Greg said if any of us ever tell anyone, he'll make sure Lily and Noah get sent somewhere worse. He said there are places worse than our house, and he knows people who run them. Mason's voice was barely audible now. Please, Miss Bradley, I can handle it. I've been handling it. How long have you been handling it, Mason? Since October. 7 months, he nodded. And nobody's asked you about the jacket before today? He almost laughed. It wasn't funny, nothing was funny, but the question struck him somewhere that hurt worse than the bruises. The counselor said I probably just like routine. Mr. Donovan called Greg and Pamela, and they told him I have attachment issues with objects. He picked at the edge of his sleeve. The CPS lady came to the house a month ago. Pamela put us in nice clothes and told us to smile. She told the lady we sleep upstairs in the bedrooms. She told her we eat 3 meals a day. She told her we're happy. And what did you tell the CPS lady? Long pause. Mason's jaw tightened. I smiled, like Pamela told me to. Ms. Bradley's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her knees to stop it. Why? Because last time I told the truth, at my old placement before the Hartwells, nobody believed me. My caseworker said I was acting out for attention. They moved me to a different home, and it was worse. So I learned. His voice went flat, empty. The voice of a 9-year-old who had already figured out how the world worked. I learned that telling the truth doesn't help. It just makes things worse. Ms. Bradley closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. When she opened them, something had changed in her face. The gentleness was still there, but underneath it was steel. Mason, I need you to show me what's under the jacket, right now. Not because I'm going to call Greg and Pamela, not because I'm going to send you back there, but because what happens next depends on what I see. He looked at the door, looked at the window, looked back at her. Then slowly, so slowly it hurt to watch, he unzipped the faded blue denim jacket. He pulled up the sleeve of the thin gray t-shirt underneath, and he held out his left arm. Miss Bradley didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She trained herself not to react in front of children because she knew that an adult's panic becomes a child's terror. So she kept her face still and calm while everything inside her chest turned to fire. Bruises. Purple ones, fresh, maybe 2 or 3 days old. Yellow ones, older, fading. Green ones in between. Finger-shaped marks on his forearm where someone had grabbed him hard enough to leave prints. A long mark across his shoulder, straight, thin, the unmistakable shape of a belt. She looked at his right arm. More bruises, different stages of healing. This wasn't one bad night. This was a calendar of violence written on a child's skin. Who did this? I fell, Mason said automatically. The programmed response. Mason, those are finger marks. That's a belt mark. Who? His tears finally came. Not sobbing, just a quiet overflow, like a cup that had been full for 7 months and couldn't hold one more drop. Greg, he uses his belt when he's really mad. Pamela holds us down sometimes. She grabs our arms so we can't move. Us. You said us. Me and Lily and Noah. Lily has bruises on her legs. She wears long pants to hide them. Noah is 5, Miss Bradley. He's 5 and he doesn't talk anymore. He used to talk all the time and now he barely says a word. Miss Bradley's hands had stopped shaking. They were steady now. Everything about her was steady now. The decision had been made. It had been made, if she was honest, 59 days ago when she started counting. But now it was concrete. Now it was action. Mason, I'm going to make a phone call. Not to Greg and Pamela, not to CPS, to my brother. Your brother? His name is Tyler. He rides with a motorcycle club. Mason's eyes widened slightly. Like a biker gang? Like a group of men who protect children, especially children the system has failed. She held his gaze. And Mason, the system has failed you. 3 times. The counselor, the principal, the CPS investigator. They all had a chance to see what I'm seeing right now, and they chose not to look. So I'm calling people who will look, who will not stop looking until you and Lily and Noah are safe. Will they believe me? That question hit her harder than anything else, harder than the bruises, harder than the belt marks. A 9-year-old boy asking if anyone would believe him, because every adult in his life had taught him that his truth didn't matter, that he was small and powerless and invisible. They will believe you, Ms. Bradley said. Every word. And Mason, I believe you. I have believed you for 59 days. She pulled out her phone and called the one number she knew would answer. Tyler Gunner Bradley picked up on the first ring. Lauren, what's wrong? Not a question, a statement he already knew. 12 years in the Army Rangers had taught him to hear fear in someone's voice, even when they were working hard to sound calm. And his sister was working very hard right now. Tyler, I'm at school. I have a 9-year-old student sitting in front of me with fingerprint bruises on both arms, a belt mark across his shoulder, and he weighs 52 pounds. He's a foster kid, been with the same family 8 months, 3 children total. Mason is 9, a girl named Lily is 8, a boy named Noah is 5. Where are they keeping them? Locked garage, converted into sleeping quarters, concrete floor, mattresses with no sheets, a deadbolt on the outside of the door. The foster parents are collecting $11,400 a month and spending almost nothing on these kids. Silence. 1 second, 2 seconds. Tyler? I'm here. I'm calling Bishop. This is Code Broken Wing. All 3 kids? All 3. Then all 3 come out, tonight. Nobody goes back to that house. You stay with that boy, Lauren. Eyes on him at all times. I'll be there in 12 minutes. Tyler, CPS already failed him a month ago. They went to the house, saw a clean kitchen, and closed the case. That's exactly why you called me instead of calling them again. His voice dropped, quiet, controlled, dangerous. 12 minutes, Lauren, and I'm not coming alone. The line went dead. Ms. Bradley looked at Mason. He's coming. How do you know he'll really help? Because 22 years ago, their club president lost his son to the foster care system. A boy named Danny. He was 11. The family looked perfect on paper. By the time anyone listened to Danny, it was too late. She watched Mason's face as the words sank in. Every man in that club carries Danny's story, and they swore, every single one of them, that it would never happen again. That's why they have the code. Code Broken Wing. When that code goes out, every brother within 80 miles drops everything. Work, dinner, sleep, doesn't matter. A child in danger overrides everything. Mason was quiet for a long moment, then, his son died? Yes. Because nobody believed him? Because nobody showed up for him. Mason looked down at his bruised arms. And now they show up for other kids? Every time, without fail. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Ms. Bradley? Yes? I'm really tired of being brave. She reached out slowly, letting him see her hand coming, giving him time to pull away, and placed it gently on his shoulder. Then stop. You've been brave long enough for 3 people. Let someone else be brave for you now. The school nurse, Carol Jennings, arrived 4 minutes later. 59 years old, gray blonde hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, hands that had documented more injuries than she could count in 33 years. Miss Bradley had texted her one word, 214, now. Carol took one look at Mason's arms and pulled out her camera. Sweetheart, I'm going to take some pictures. Just your arms and your shoulder. Is that okay? Mason nodded. She photographed every bruise, close-up, wide angle. With a small ruler held next to each mark for scale, she measured the spacing between the finger-shaped bruises. Adult male hand, she noted. She weighed him on the portable scale she carried. 52 pounds. When was the last time you ate a full meal, Mason? He thought about it. Really thought. I had a sandwich at school on Monday. The lunch lady gave me an extra one because she said I looked tired. That was 2 days ago. What about at home? Pamela makes us eat whatever's left over. Sometimes it's rice, sometimes crackers. Noah gets the most because he's the littlest. I give him my share when there isn't enough. Carol's pen stopped moving. She looked at Ms. Bradley over her glasses. The look said everything. This child is starving. This child has been starving for months. This is not neglect. This is torture. She finished her documentation and handed the folder to Ms. Bradley. This is medical evidence, time-stamped, photographed, measured. Not hearsay, not opinion. Proof. Then she looked toward the window. Your brother's friends are here. The sound had started while she was documenting, low at first, distant, like thunder building over the Rocky Mountain foothills. But it grew, and grew, and grew until the windows of room 108 were vibrating, and the fluorescent lights were humming in sympathy, and the floor itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of engines. Mason walked to the window. He pressed his forehead against the glass and looked down at the parking lot, and his breath fogged the window because his mouth had fallen open. Motorcycles. Not one, not 5, not 20, dozens. An endless column of chrome and leather pouring into the Pinecrest Elementary parking lot like a river breaking through a dam. They filled the main lot. They spilled into the overflow lot. They lined up along the school fence, engines rumbling in unison, a sound so deep and powerful that Mason felt it in his sternum. Riders dismounted, leather vests, patches, gray beards, brown beards, no beards. Big men, small men, old men. They moved with coordination, purpose, not chaos, not aggression, precision, like soldiers forming ranks. How many? Mason whispered. I don't know yet, but Tyler said everyone within 80 miles. They're all here for me? For you, for Lily, for Noah, for every kid Greg and Pamela Hartwell ever locked in that garage. The classroom door opened. Tyler Gunner Bradley walked in first. 6'2", sandy brown hair cropped close, the kind of build that said he hadn't stopped training since his 3rd deployment. His leather vest bore patches, Hell's Angels rocker, Denver chapter, military service ribbon, sergeant at arms. His face was calm, his eyes were not. They swept the room, found Mason, and locked on with an intensity that made the boy step back instinctively. Then Tyler crouched down, dropped to one knee, made himself small. And his voice, when he spoke, was the softest sound in the room. Hey buddy, I'm Tyler. Your teacher is my little sister. She told me you've been having a rough time. Mason nodded. Can I see? Mason looked at Miss Bradley. She nodded. He held out his arms. Tyler looked. His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his neck. His hands that had held rifles, thrown punches, carried wounded brothers across desert sand, curled into fists at his sides. But his face stayed gentle. His voice stayed soft. You did good, Mason. You did real good telling my sister. That was the bravest thing you've ever done, and I need you to know that. Are you going to help? I'm going to do more than help, buddy. I'm going to make sure nobody hurts you or Lily or Noah ever again. Behind Tyler, another man appeared in the doorway, and the entire energy of the room changed. Frank Bishop Harmon was 61 years old. Gray-brown beard, thick as steel wool. Face weathered by 30 years of grief and purpose. Blue eyes that could freeze a man at 20 paces or melt a child's fear at 5. He wore the president patch. He moved like a mountain deciding to walk. Slow, deliberate, inevitable. He filled the doorframe, not just with his body, with his presence. With the weight of everything he carried, 22 years of loss, 22 years of turning that loss into action, 22 years of showing up for children because he hadn't shown up in time for his own son. Miss Bradley. His voice was quiet, not soft, quiet. There's a difference. Soft is gentle. Quiet is controlled power with the volume turned low. Your brother tells me we've got 3 kids locked in a garage, foster parents collecting 11 grand a month while running a charity that makes them look like saints, and a system that's already closed the case once. That right? That's right, Mr. Harmon. Bishop. Everyone calls me Bishop. He turned to Mason, and something extraordinary happened. The mountain became a meadow. The hardness dissolved. The authority remained, but it wrapped itself in warmth so complete that Mason, who had learned to fear every adult male in his life, didn't step back, didn't flinch, didn't pull his sleeves down. "Son, I'm going to sit down here and talk to you for a minute, man to man, because what I'm about to tell you is something I don't tell many people, and I need you to hear it." He pulled a chair over, sat down slowly. His knees popped. He smiled slightly at the sound. "Getting old, kid. Don't recommend it." Mason almost smiled. Almost. 22 years ago, Bishop said, I had a son named Danny. Brown hair, big laugh, loved baseball and hated broccoli, and could talk your ear off about dinosaurs until you begged him to stop. He paused. Let the words settle. Danny ended up in foster care when his mom, my first wife, passed away and I was deployed overseas. The state placed him with a family. Nice house, good neighborhood, background checks, all clean. On paper, they were perfect. He looked at Mason directly. No evasion, no sugarcoating. They weren't perfect, Mason. They were the opposite of perfect. And Danny tried to tell people. He told his teacher. He told his caseworker. He told the neighbor. You know what they all said? Mason's eyes were wide. They didn't believe him. They didn't believe him. A scared little boy telling the truth. And every adult in his life decided the smiling couple with the nice house must be right, and the kid must be lying. Bishop's voice stayed steady, but his hands gripped his knees. By the time I got home from overseas and found out what was happening, it was too late. Danny was gone. The room was absolutely silent. I buried my son on a Tuesday, Bishop said, and on Wednesday I made a promise to Danny, to God, to myself, that I would spend the rest of my life making sure no other kid suffered what he suffered, that I would build something, a brotherhood, a network, a wall of men who would show up when the system wouldn't. He leaned forward slightly. That's what code broken wing is, Mason. That's why there are 139 motorcycles in your school parking lot right now. Because every man out there carries Danny's name in his heart. And when the code goes out, when a child is in danger, nothing else matters. Not work, not sleep, not distance, nothing. Mason's tears had started again. Silent ones. The kind that fall without permission. Your son died because nobody showed up, Mason said quietly. Yes. And now you show up for other kids. Every single time. Without fail. Without exception. For 22 years. Mason looked at his bruised arms. Then at Bishop. Then at Tyler. Then at his teacher. Then back at Bishop. Greg tells us nobody cares about foster kids, he said. He says we're disposable. He says the state pays him to keep us and that's all we're worth. A check. Bishop's expression didn't change, but something behind his blue eyes caught fire. Greg is a liar, son, and tonight Greg is going to learn what happens when a liar meets 139 men who care more about the truth than anything else on this earth. He stood, placed one hand, weathered, scarred, steady, on Mason's shoulder. You've been carrying this alone for 7 months, protecting Lily, protecting Noah, taking hits meant for them, giving away your food, sleeping on concrete, and you never broke. You never stopped fighting for those kids. His hand tightened gently. But that's over now, Mason. You hear me? It's over. You don't carry this alone anymore. We carry it. All 139 of us. And Greg and Pamela Hartwell are about to discover that hurting children has consequences no church sermon and no charity gala can protect them from. The door opened again. A stocky man in wire-rimmed glasses stepped in, laptop under his arm, notebook in his hand. He looked more like a tax auditor than a biker, which was exactly what he'd been. Bishop, I've already pulled the preliminary financials. Derek Ledger Collins pushed his glasses up his nose. 6 years of foster care payments. 14 different children cycled through that house. And a charity called Little Blessings that's bleeding money into personal accounts. He glanced at Mason, then at Miss Bradley. Ma'am, your instinct about the money was right. These people aren't just abusing children. They built a business model around it, and I'm going to prove every dollar. Another man appeared behind Ledger. Tall, dark blonde hair, phone already in hand. Ryan Echo Whitfield, former investigative journalist. Bishop, I need 5 minutes with Miss Bradley. If the Hartwells run their playbook, crying on camera, invoking their charity, playing the persecuted Christians, we need the counter-narrative locked down before they get a microphone. Do it, Bishop said. But Echo, this is about evidence, not revenge. We document, we testify, we let the law do its job. We just make sure the law actually does it this time. Understood. Miss Bradley's phone buzzed. A text from the CPS hotline. Case assigned. Investigator dispatched. Estimated arrival, 18 to 24 hours. She showed it to Tyler. He showed it to Bishop. Bishop read it, nodded once, then pulled out his own phone and typed a message to all 139 brothers. CPS says 24 hours. We say tonight. Nobody leaves until these children are out of that house. He looked at Mason, who was eating a granola bar that Kevin Chalk Reed, former teacher, current angel in leather, had pulled from an emergency backpack. Mason was eating it slowly, carefully, breaking off small pieces and chewing each one completely before taking the next. Not because he wanted to savor it, because he learned that if you eat too fast when you haven't eaten in days, your stomach cramps and you throw up, and then you've wasted food you might not get again. Every adult in that room watched a 9-year-old boy eat a granola bar like it was the last food on earth. And every one of them, bikers, teacher, nurse, made the same silent promise. Not one more night, not one more hour, not one more minute of this child's suffering. Tonight, it ends. Mason looked up from his granola bar, crumbs on his chin, tears drying on his cheeks, and said something that nobody in that room would ever forget. Miss Bradley? Yes, sweetheart? If your brother and his friends save us tonight, if we really don't have to go back, can I still come to school tomorrow? Because this classroom is the only place I've felt safe in 7 months, and I don't want to lose it. Miss Bradley knelt beside him, took his hands, gently, so gently, in hers. Mason Riley, you are coming to school tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and you are never, ever going to feel unsafe again. That is a promise from me, from Tyler, from Bishop, and from every single man in that parking lot. Mason looked out the window at the sea of motorcycles, at the leather-clad figures standing shoulder to shoulder in the fading Colorado sunlight, at the chrome catching the last light of a day that had started like every other terrible day of his life, but was ending like nothing he had ever experienced. There's so many of them, he whispered. 139, Ms. Bradley said. All for us, all for you. He pressed his forehead against the glass again. His breath fogged the window, and in the fog, without thinking about it, he drew a small heart with his finger. Then he whispered something so quiet that only Miss Bradley heard it. Maybe Greg was wrong. Maybe somebody does care about foster kids. Outside, 139 engines idled in unison, waiting, ready, patient, not leaving until 3 children walked out of a locked garage for the last time. And in room 108, a 9-year-old boy in a faded blue denim jacket finished his granola bar, leaned against his teacher's shoulder, and closed his eyes. For the first time in 7 months, he wasn't afraid to fall asleep. Mason was still leaning against Ms. Bradley's shoulder when Bishop's phone buzzed. He read the message, read it again, then held it up so Tyler could see. Tyler's face went white. What is it? Ms. Bradley asked. Pamela Hartwell just called the school office. Bishop's voice was controlled, flat, the kind of flat that meant he was holding something back. She's on her way to pick up Mason. Says she got a call from the front desk that he was kept after class for a disciplinary issue. Ms. Bradley stood up fast. I didn't authorize any call. Nobody in this building was supposed to contact them. Tyler was already moving toward the door. Who called her? Bishop held up one hand. Echo, find out who in this school made that call. Now. Echo disappeared down the hallway at a near run. Mason had gone rigid. Every muscle in his small body locked tight. The granola bar dropped from his hand and hit the floor, and he didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the classroom door like it was about to burst open and swallow him whole. She's coming, he whispered. She's coming here. She'll know I told. She'll know. Miss Bradley dropped to her knees in front of him. Mason, look at me. Look at my eyes. Nobody is taking you out of this room. Do you understand me? Nobody. You don't know Pamela. She's good at this. She cries and she smiles and she makes everyone believe her. She'll walk in here and she'll say, I'm a liar, and everyone will believe her because that's what always happens. Not today. Bishop's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Not with 139 witnesses standing between her and this door. Tyler pulled out his phone. I need 8 brothers at the main entrance. Now. Nobody enters this school without my say-so. And somebody find out how far out Pamela Hartwell is. 30 seconds later, the answer came back. She was 12 minutes away. 12 minutes, Tyler said. We have 12 minutes to lock this down. Bishop turned to Miss Bradley. Is there another adult in this school you trust completely? Someone who will stand with you and not fold under pressure? Carol, the nurse. She documented everything. Get her back in here. Carol Jennings was back in room 108 within 2 minutes, reading glasses perched on her nose, medical folder clutched against her chest. Bishop gave her a 30-second briefing. Let her come, Carol said. Her voice was ice. I've got photographs of bruises on this child that match an adult male's handprint. I've got his weight on record. I've got clinical documentation that would hold up in any courtroom in Colorado. Pamela Hartwell can cry all she wants. Tears don't erase evidence. Echo burst back through the door, breathing hard. Found it, vice principal, a guy named Randall Peters. Pamela Hartwell is on his emergency contact list. The system auto-notified her when Mason was flagged as staying after school past the normal pickup window. Peters didn't override it. Did he know about the report? Bishop asked. He says he didn't check his email. Says he was in a meeting. Tyler swore under his breath. A meeting. A child's mandatory abuse report sitting in his inbox, and he was in a meeting. It gets worse, Echo said. Peters and Greg Hartwell serve on the same church board at Grace Community. They play golf together. Monthly. The room went dead silent. Miss Bradley's hands curled into fists. Randall Peters has been at this school for 9 years. He's had access to Mason's file. He's seen the attendance records, the weight loss, the behavioral flags, and he's golfing buddies with the man who beats this child. Did he know? Tyler asked. Did Peters know what was happening in that house? That's what we're going to find out, Bishop said. But not right now. Right now, Pamela Hartwell is 8 minutes away, and we need to be ready. Mason had pulled his knees to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. He was rocking slightly, a self-soothing behavior that Carol recognized immediately. She'd seen it in dozens of traumatized children, the body trying to comfort itself when no one else would. Mason, Bishop said. He didn't crouch down this time. He stayed standing, let his full height fill the space. Let the boy see exactly how big the wall between him and danger was. I need you to hear something, and I need you to believe it. Pamela Hartwell is going to walk into this school, and she is going to put on a performance. She will cry. She will use her church voice. She will call you troubled and difficult and confused. She will try to make every adult in this building feel sorry for her. That is her weapon. It has worked on caseworkers. It has worked on principals. It has worked on an entire congregation. He paused. It will not work on me. It will not work on your teacher. It will not work on any of the 139 men standing between her and this room. Because we've seen this performance before, Mason. We've seen it from every abuser who ever wore a nice outfit and smiled for the camera. And we know exactly what's hiding underneath. Mason looked up at him. What if she takes me? She won't. But what if she won't? Tyler's phone buzzed. She's pulling into the parking lot. Bishop straightened his vest. Good. Let her see the bikes. Let her count them. Let her understand exactly what she's walking into. What Pamela Hartwell saw when she turned onto Pinecrest Elementary's access road stopped her SUV dead in the middle of the street. Motorcycles. Everywhere. Filling every parking space, lining both sides of the road, stretching around the school fence like an iron perimeter. And men, leather-vested, arms crossed, stone-faced men, standing on the sidewalks, on the grass, along the school entrance, silent, watching. She sat in her car for a full minute. Tyler's brothers on the ground reported she was on her phone, calling Greg most likely, or their lawyer, or their pastor, running through the Rolodex of people who had always protected them before. Then she got out. She was wearing exactly what everyone expected: floral blouse, cardigan, pearl earrings, hair done, makeup fresh, the costume of a concerned, respectable foster mother rushing to pick up her child from school. She clutched her purse with both hands and walked toward the entrance with her chin up and her eyes wide with practiced worry. 8 Hell's Angels stood at the main doors. They didn't block her path. They didn't speak. They just watched as she walked between them, heels clicking on the concrete, and disappeared inside. Tyler was waiting in the hallway outside room 108. Mrs. Hartwell. Pamela stopped, looked at him, at the leather vest, at the patches, at the military ribbon. Her smile flickered for a fraction of a second before she locked it back in place. I'm here to pick up my foster son, Mason Riley. I was told he was kept after class. Mason is with his teacher and the school nurse. He's safe. Safe? Pamela's voice pitched higher, trembling, the performance beginning. Of course he's safe. He's always safe. I don't understand what's happening. There are motorcycles all over the parking lot. I'm frightened. Can someone please tell me what's going on? CPS has been notified. A mandatory report has been filed. Mason will remain in school custody until the investigation is resolved. Pamela's eyes hardened for exactly 1 second. 1 second of the real Pamela, the calculating, controlling woman who locked children in a garage and spent their support money on kitchen renovations. Then the mask slammed back down. This is a misunderstanding. Mason has behavioral issues. He's been diagnosed with attachment disorder. He makes up stories for attention. I can show you his file. Our caseworker, our pastor, our therapist, they'll all tell you the same thing. Ma'am, the school nurse has documented injuries on Mason that are inconsistent with any behavioral explanation. Fingerprint bruising, belt marks, chronic malnutrition. He weighs 52 pounds. Pamela's lip trembled, her eyes filled with tears. Right on cue. I love that boy. I love all 3 of those children. We took them in when nobody else would. Do you know how hard it is to foster children with trauma? They hurt themselves, they lie, they test boundaries. And now because of one teacher who doesn't understand trauma behaviors, I'm being treated like a criminal? Tyler didn't blink. Ma'am, I have a question. If Mason's injuries are self-inflicted, why are the bruises shaped like adult fingerprints? The tears stopped, just for a moment, just long enough for the calculation to show. I want to see my son. He's not your son, Mrs. Hartwell. He's a foster child in your care. And right now, that care is under investigation. I have rights. I'm his legal guardian. And he has rights too, including the right to be safe. Pamela took a step forward. Tyler didn't move. Didn't need to. Bishop appeared in the classroom doorway behind him. 6'1", 240 pounds, the president patch catching the hallway fluorescent light. Mrs. Hartwell, Bishop's voice was the quietest sound in the building and somehow the loudest. I'm going to recommend you go home and wait for CPS to contact you. You can bring your lawyer, you can bring your pastor, you can bring whoever makes you feel comfortable, but you are not entering this classroom and you are not leaving this building with that child. Who are you? You can't keep me from my foster children. I'm a father who buried his son because people like you convinced the system he was lying. And I've spent 22 years making sure it doesn't happen again. Bishop took one step into the hallway. One step. That was all it took. Go home, Mrs. Hartwell. Hug your husband. Call your lawyer. Because by tomorrow morning, you're going to need one. Pamela Hartwell looked at Bishop, at Tyler, at the 8 men visible through the glass entrance doors, at the sea of chrome beyond them. And for the first time in 6 years of manipulation, charm, and carefully performed motherhood, she had no play, no angle, no audience willing to believe her. Her face changed, the mask cracked, not into grief, not into guilt, into fury, pure, undiluted rage that flashed across her features like lightning before she caught it and stuffed it back down. You'll be hearing from our attorney, she said. We look forward to it, Bishop replied. She turned and walked back down the hallway. Her heels echoed. Every Hell's Angels member she passed watched her go. She pushed through the entrance doors, crossed the parking lot, 139 pairs of eyes tracking every step, got into her SUV, and sat there for 3 minutes before she started the engine and pulled away. Tyler waited until her taillights disappeared. Then he pulled out his phone. She's gone, but she's not going home. She's going to destroy evidence. Somebody needs to be at that house before she gets there. Bishop was already dialing. Brothers at Cedarbrook Lane. Pamela Hartwell left the school 2 minutes ago. She's heading your way. Eyes on the house. If anything goes into a trash can, a car trunk, or a fire pit, I want it documented. The response came back in 15 seconds. Copy, Bishop. We've got the house covered. Nothing moves without us seeing it. Back in room 108, Mason was still curled in his chair. He'd heard everything through the door. Every word. His face was wet, but his eyes were focused. She used her church voice, he said. She did, Miss Bradley confirmed. That's the one she uses on caseworkers, on Pastor Davis, on the neighbors. She cries and everybody says, poor Pamela, those difficult foster children. She's such a saint for taking them in. It didn't work this time, buddy, Tyler said, pulling up a chair beside him. Why not? Tyler leaned back. Because the people she usually performs for want to believe her. It's easier. If Pamela's a good person, then nobody has to feel guilty for not noticing what's happening to you. Nobody has to get involved. Nobody has to do anything uncomfortable. He looked at Mason directly. We don't want easy, Mason. We want the truth. And the truth is written all over your arms. Ledger appeared in the doorway, glasses slightly askew, laptop open. The expression on his face was the one Miss Bradley would later describe as a bloodhound who'd found the trail. Bishop, we have a problem, a big one. Talk to me. I've been digging into the Hartwell's financial records for the last hour. The foster care payments, the charity fraud, that's bad enough. But I found something else. He turned his laptop around. Life insurance policies, 2 of them, taken out on previous foster children who were placed with the Hartwells. The room went still. Both children died while in Hartwell care. One in 2020, a 7-year-old boy, ruled accidental, drowned in a bathtub. One in 2022, a 9-year-old girl, also ruled accidental, fell down basement stairs. Ledger's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Combined payout, $195,000. Both policies purchased by Greg Hartwell within 30 days of each child's placement. Nobody spoke. Mason's face had gone white, completely white. There were kids before us? Bishop crouched down in front of him. Mason, did Greg or Pamela ever mention other foster children who lived with them before you? No, but there were marks on the garage wall, like with a pencil, names and dates. I thought maybe they were from kids who lived there before. I didn't think. His voice trailed off. Did those kids die? Bishop looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at Ms. Bradley. Ms. Bradley looked at Carol. Nobody wanted to answer a 9-year-old boy's question about whether children had died in the same house where he'd been locked in a garage for 7 months. We're going to find out exactly what happened, Bishop said carefully. But right now what matters is that you and Lily and Noah are not going back to that house. Not tonight, not ever. But those kids, Mason said. If Greg hurt them like he hurts us, and nobody believed them either, and they... He couldn't finish the sentence. That's why we're here, son, so the story doesn't end the same way. Ledger closed his laptop. Bishop, I need to get this information to law enforcement tonight. If those death investigations were closed prematurely, they need to be reopened. And if Pamela is heading home to destroy evidence right now, those insurance documents might be on paper in that house. Already handled. Brothers are watching the house. Nothing leaves. Bishop pulled out his phone and dialed. Detective Brian Keller, Denver PD Fraud Unit. I need you at Pinecrest Elementary within the hour. We have evidence of a foster care fraud operation totaling $650,000, potential charitable fraud, and 2 suspicious deaths of minors with corresponding life insurance payouts. He paused, listening. Yes, Detective. I'm aware that's a significant accusation. That's why I have the financial documentation ready for your review. I also have medical evidence, witness testimony, and statements from former foster children. Another pause. How many witnesses? 139. Echo came back into the room, carrying his phone like it was a weapon. Bishop, I tracked down a 3rd former Hartwell foster kid. She's 20 now. Aged out of the system 3 years ago. She's willing to talk, right now. Put her on speaker. Echo set the phone on Ms. Bradley's desk. The voice that came through was thin, shaking, but determined. My name is Rachel. I was with the Hartwells when I was 12. For 11 months. That was 2019. Rachel, I'm Bishop. You're on speaker with several people who are working to protect 3 children currently in the Hartwell home. Can you tell us what happened when you were there? The same thing that's happening to those kids right now. I guarantee it. Her breath hitched. The garage, the lock on the outside, the mattresses on concrete. They had 2 of us back then. Me and a boy named Marcus who was 10. We slept in that garage from October to August. Greg hit Marcus. Pamela held him down. They barely fed us. When the caseworker came, Pamela would move us into those pretty bedrooms upstairs for the day and make us put on clean clothes and smile. Did you report it? I tried, twice. My caseworker said I had a history of lying. That was in my file from a previous placement. A placement where I also told the truth, and nobody believed me. Her voice broke. When I aged out at 18, I swore I'd never think about that house again. I tried to forget. But last year I heard they still had kids. That Greg was still coaching Little League. That Pamela was still running that charity. And I knew. I knew other children were in that garage. Why didn't you come forward? Silence. Then barely audible. Because the last time I told the truth, I was a 12-year-old girl, and every adult in the system told me I was a liar. Do you know what that does to you? It teaches you that your voice doesn't matter, that you're disposable, that the adults with nice houses and church memberships will always be believed over the kids sleeping on concrete. Mason was listening, every word. His face was unreadable except for his eyes, which burned with something that hadn't been there an hour ago. Recognition. He was hearing his own story from someone else's mouth. Rachel, Mason said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Rachel, my name is Mason. I'm 9. I've been in that garage since October. The same garage, the same mattresses, the same lock. Silence on the phone, then crying. Quiet, broken, crying. I'm sorry, Rachel whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't fight harder. I'm sorry I let them keep doing this. It's not your fault, Mason said, and his voice, his 9-year-old voice, was steady, firm, older than it should have been. You were 12. You were scared. They told you nobody would believe you, and you believed them because that's what they do. They make you think you're the problem. Bishop stared at Mason. Tyler stared at Mason. Miss Bradley pressed her hand over her mouth. A 9-year-old boy comforting a 20-year-old woman. A child who had been carrying the weight of his own survival for 7 months. And his first instinct when he heard someone else's pain was to lighten it. Rachel, Bishop said quietly, would you be willing to give a formal statement to law enforcement? Yes. No hesitation. I'll tell them everything, every detail, every bruise, every night in that garage. I'll say it in court if I have to, because if my voice didn't matter when I was 12, it's going to matter now. Echo ended the call and looked at Bishop. That makes 3 former foster kids willing to testify. 3 witnesses who were failed by the same system, the same family, the same lie. Ledger was already updating his files. Combined with the financial evidence, the medical documentation, the neighbor statements, and the insurance policies, Bishop, this isn't just a child abuse case anymore. This is racketeering. This is organized exploitation. And if those 2 children's deaths weren't accidents, then it's murder, Bishop finished. The word hung in the air like smoke. Ms. Bradley's phone buzzed. She read the message and looked up with something close to disbelief. CPS is expediting. They're sending an investigator tonight, not in 24 hours, tonight. What changed their mind? Tyler asked. The school nurse filed a secondary report directly to the state office, flagged it as emergency level with photographic evidence. She looked at Carol. You went over their heads. Carol adjusted her glasses. I've watched CPS close cases on abused children because some caseworker was overloaded and took the easy path. Not this time, not this child. Bishop nodded. How long until they arrive? 45 minutes. Good. That gives Ledger time to organize the financial package. Echo, I want the witness statements compiled. Tyler, I need brothers ready to move on the Hartwell house the moment CPS authorizes removal. Doc, you standing by for medical assessments on all 3 children? Carl Doc Miller stepped out of the corner where he'd been standing quietly for the past 20 minutes. He'd arrived during Pamela's visit, hadn't said a word, just watched, listened. The combat medic's face was granite, but his eyes were wet. I've been ready since I walked through that door and saw that boy's arms, Doc said. I've patched bullet wounds, Bishop. I've held men together with my bare hands in combat. But a child who weighs 52 pounds and flinches when an adult moves too fast? That breaks something in me that bullets never could. He opened his med kit, checked his supplies, closed it with a snap. When we pull those other 2 kids out tonight, I want 10 minutes with each of them before anyone else asks them a single question. Medical assessment first, trauma response second, interrogation never. These are children, not witnesses. We treat them like children first. Agreed, Bishop said. Kevin Chalk Reed had been sitting with Mason during the entire exchange, quietly feeding him apple slices and water. Not pushing, not asking questions, just being present, being safe. The former teacher understood something the others were still learning. Mason didn't just need rescue, he needed normalcy. He needed 5 minutes where nobody was talking about bruises or insurance policies or murder. He needed to be a 9-year-old kid eating apple slices with a guy who smelled like motor oil and talked about baseball. You like the Rockies? Chalk asked. Mason nodded. I used to, before. Greg doesn't let us watch TV. Who's your favorite player? Mason thought about it. Really thought. Like he was reaching back through 7 months of darkness to find a memory that still had light in it. I liked watching the games with my mom, before she died. She used to yell at the TV when they struck out. Chalk smiled. My wife does the same thing, throws popcorn at the screen. Something shifted in Mason's face. Not a smile, not yet, but the ghost of one, the possibility of one. Chalk? Mason said quietly. Yeah, buddy. When this is over, if it's really over, can I go to a game someday? Chalk looked at Bishop. Bishop looked back. The president of the Denver chapter of the Hells Angels, a man who had buried his son and built a brotherhood from grief, nodded once. Mason, Chalk said, when this is over, I'm personally taking you to Coors Field. Front row, hot dogs, the works. That's a promise. And Mason Riley, 9 years old, 52 pounds, wearing a faded blue denim jacket that had hidden 7 months of hell, did something nobody in that room had seen him do. He smiled. Not a big smile, not a kid at Christmas smile. A small, careful, cautious smile. The kind of smile that says, I want to believe you, but I've been hurt too many times to believe all the way. But it was real, and everyone in that room saw it, and everyone in that room carried it with them out into that parking lot where 139 engines waited to roar to life and ride toward a house on Cedarbrook Lane where 2 more children were still locked behind a deadbolt, still waiting for someone to show up. And they were about to show up with everything they had. Denise Lawson had been a CPS investigator for 14 years. She'd walked into meth houses, confronted parents high on fentanyl, pulled toddlers out of apartments where the electricity had been off for weeks. She thought she'd seen the full spectrum of what adults could do to children. She had not been prepared for 139 motorcycles. She pulled into the Pinecrest Elementary parking lot at 7:14 p.m. and had to stop her car because there was physically nowhere to drive. Chrome everywhere. Leather everywhere. Men standing in rows along the walkways, not blocking, not threatening, just present in a way that made the air feel heavier. She grabbed her tablet, her file folder, and what was left of her composure, and walked through the gauntlet to the front entrance. Tyler met her at the door. Ms. Lawson? Who are you? Tyler Bradley, the reporting teacher is my sister. I'll walk you to room 108. And the motorcycles? Community support. Denise looked at him for a long moment. Then she followed. When she walked into room 108, she expected what she usually found. A panicked teacher, a confused child, and a situation that would take 30 minutes to sort out and probably result in a follow-up visit scheduled for next week. Instead, she found a school nurse with a clinical evidence folder thick enough to choke on. A teacher with 2 months of handwritten daily observations. A man in wire-rimmed glasses sitting at a laptop with financial spreadsheets covering the screen. A former journalist with recorded witness statements queued on his phone. A combat medic standing in the corner with a medical kit. And a 61-year-old biker club president who shook her hand like they were at a board meeting and said, Miss Lawson, thank you for expediting. We have everything organized for your review. Where would you like to start? Denise stared at him. This is the most unusual mandatory report response I've ever seen. The usual response failed this child 3 times, Bishop said. We decided unusual was necessary. Show me the medical evidence first. Carol handed her the folder. Denise opened it, looked at the photographs, looked at the measurements, looked at the weight documentation. Her jaw tightened with every page. Where's the child? Right here. Ms. Bradley stepped aside. Mason was sitting at his desk, chalk beside him. He had a juice box in one hand and a colored pencil in the other. Chalk had given him paper and told him to draw whatever he wanted. He'd drawn a house with a sun over it, not the Hartwell house, a house he'd invented, one with windows and a front door that didn't have a lock on the outside. Denise approached slowly. Mason? I'm Denise. I work for Children's Services. Mason looked at her, then at Ms. Bradley, then back at Denise. The last person from your office came to our house a month ago, he said. She talked to Pamela for 20 minutes in the kitchen while we sat in the living room in nice clothes. She never asked us anything without Pamela standing right there. She left, and nothing changed. Denise flinched. I know. I read the file on my way here. That's not how it should have been handled. Are you going to do it different? Yes. How? The question caught her off guard. Not because it was rude, because it was precise. This 9-year-old boy had been failed enough times to know that promises from adults in official positions meant nothing without specifics. I'm going to interview you privately, Denise said, without any foster parent present. I'm going to interview Lily and Noah the same way. I'm going to inspect the actual living conditions in that house, not the stage bedrooms, the real ones. And if what I find matches what's in this medical report, I'm filing for emergency removal tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Mason studied her face the way a poker player studies an opponent, looking for the tell, the flinch, the moment where the nice words dissolve into excuses. Okay, he said finally, but I'm telling you now, the garage is bad, and Lily has bruises on her legs that she hides. And Noah stopped talking 2 months ago. He used to talk all the time, and now he barely says anything. If you go to that house and you see those kids and you leave them there, I will never trust another adult as long as I live. Denise Lawson had heard thousands of children make statements during her career. She had never been spoken to like this by a 9-year-old. Not with anger, not with pleading, with a calm, exhausted certainty that said, I have been let down by every system designed to protect me, and you are my last chance. I hear you, Mason, she said. I hear you. She turned to Bishop. I need to get to that house, now. We'll escort you. That's not standard protocol. Neither is locking children in a garage. Ms. Lawson, we're not going to interfere with your investigation. We're going to stand on public property and make sure nothing disappears before you get inside. Greg Hartwell is at that house right now. Pamela arrived 20 minutes ago. Our people on the ground report they've been loading bags into their car. Denise's head snapped up. They're running? Or destroying evidence. Either way, we need to move. Denise grabbed her tablet. Let's go. Tyler's phone rang as they headed for the parking lot. He answered, listened for 5 seconds, and his face changed. Bishop, Greg Hartwell just put Lily and Noah in the car. He's backing out of the driveway. Everything accelerated. Bishop's voice went from boardroom to battlefield in half a second. Which direction? East on Cedarbrook toward Route 36. How many brothers on site? 15. They're following at distance. Not engaging. Keep eyes on that vehicle. Do not lose it. Do not approach. Call 911 and report 2 minor children being transported by a suspect under active CPS investigation. Bishop turned to Denise. Ms. Lawson, you need to call the police. Greg Hartwell is fleeing with 2 of the 3 children. Denise was already dialing. This is Denise Lawson, CPS investigator, badge number 472. I need a patrol unit to intercept a vehicle heading east on Cedarbrook Lane toward Route 36. Gray Chevy Tahoe, male driver, 2 minor children in the vehicle. Children are subjects of an active emergency removal order. Consider flight risk. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. If he gets on the highway with those kids, he won't, Tyler said. I have 15 brothers behind him and 20 more between him and the I-25 on-ramp. He's boxed. Your people cannot stop that vehicle. That's vigilantism. They're not going to stop it. They're going to follow it. Loudly, in formation. Have you ever tried to run from 15 Harleys at night, Miss Lawson? You can't hear yourself think. You can't focus. You make mistakes. And when the police arrive, we'll be able to tell them exactly where he is. Bishop was on his phone, barking orders with the precision of a man who'd done this before. All units east of Cedarbrook. Greg Hartwell is mobile with 2 minors. Gray Tahoe, Colorado plates. Form corridor. Do not block. Do not engage. Maintain visual. Police are en route. Miss Bradley grabbed Mason's hand. We need to stay here. Tyler, go. Tyler looked at Mason. The boy's face was white again. The fragile smile from 5 minutes ago had been replaced by raw terror. "Lily," Mason said. "Noah. He has Lily and Noah." "We're going to get them, buddy. He'll hurt them. If he thinks he's caught, he'll hurt them. That's what he does. When he feels trapped, he gets worse." Tyler crouched down. "Mason, look at me. There are 15 men following that car right now. Police are on the way. Your foster sisters are not alone."
Not anymore.
"Noah is 5. He's 5 years old and he's in that car with Greg, and Greg is scared and angry and—" "Mason." Tyler gripped the boy's shoulders. Gently but firmly. "I need you to breathe. Can you do that? Breathe with me." Mason tried. His breath came in ragged bursts. Chalk moved in close, put a hand on the boy's back. "In through the nose, buddy. Slow. That's it. Again." Tyler stood, looked at his sister. "Stay with him. Lock this door. I'll call you the second we have those kids." He was gone. The next 11 minutes were the longest of Mason Riley's life. He sat in room 108 with Miss Bradley on one side and Chalk on the other, and Carol standing by the door, and he pressed his forehead against the window and watched the parking lot empty as motorcycle after motorcycle roared to life and peeled out of the lot and disappeared into the Denver evening. Miss Bradley's phone was on the desk, volume up. Updates came in fragments. Hartwell turned north on Wadsworth, still heading north, doing 60 in a 45 zone. Police units approaching from the south, 2 cruisers. Hartwell spotted the cruisers. He's accelerating. Mason's fingernails dug into his palms. He's on Route 36 westbound, doing 70. 15 bikes maintaining pursuit, not closing, just following. Carol muttered something under her breath that sounded like a prayer. Police are requesting Hartwell pull over via loudspeaker. He's not responding. "He's not going to stop," Mason said. His voice was hollow. "He told us once. He said if anyone ever tried to take us away, he'd drive to the mountains and nobody would ever find us." Ms. Bradley's blood ran cold. "Tyler needs to know that, right now." She grabbed the phone and called her brother. "Tyler, Mason says Greg threatened to drive to the mountains and disappear with the kids if anyone tried to take them. He's not going to pull over." Tyler related to Bishop. Bishop related to the police dispatcher. Then a new voice crackled through Tyler's phone, one of the brothers on the road. "Bishop, the Tahoe is slowing down. He's taking the Broomfield exit." "Why?" "I don't know. Wait, he's pulling into a gas station. He's stopped. He's just sitting there, engine still running." "Police?" 2 minutes out. "Kids visible?" "Back seat. The older girl is visible through the rear window. She's got the younger boy in her arms." Mason heard that through the phone speaker. He closed his eyes. "That's Lily. She holds Noah when she's scared. She wraps her arms around him and rocks him. That's what they do in the garage at night when Greg locks the door." Chalk's hand tightened on Mason's shoulder. "Police arriving," the voice reported. 2 units, approaching the vehicle. Hartwell's got his hands on the steering wheel. He's not moving. "Kids?" "Still in the back seat. The girl is holding the boy. They're not moving either." 30 seconds of silence. The longest 30 seconds of the night. Then, officers are at the driver's window. Hartwell is talking. He's crying. He's doing the act. Hands up. Cooperative. Telling them it's a misunderstanding. "Are the officers buying it?" Bishop asked. "One of them is checking the back seat. He's opening the rear door. He's talking to the girl." Mason held his breath. "Bishop, the officer just stepped back from the vehicle. He's calling for backup. I repeat, he looked at those kids and he immediately called for backup." "What did he see?" "I don't know, but his partner just pulled Hartwell out of the driver's seat and put him in cuffs." Mason let out a sound that wasn't a word. It was relief and grief and rage and 7 months of suffocated terror escaping through his throat in one raw, broken exhale. "They got him?" he asked. Miss Bradley was crying. She nodded. They got him. And Lily and Noah? They're with the police. They're safe. Are they scared? Probably, sweetheart. Yes. Can I talk to them, please? They don't know what's happening. They're going to think they're in trouble. They always think they're in trouble. Can I just tell them it's okay? Miss Bradley looked at Chalk. Chalk looked at Carol. Carol picked up the phone and called Denise Lawson. 4 minutes later, a patrol officer held a phone to 8-year-old Lily Simmons's ear in the back of a police cruiser at a Broomfield gas station. Lily? Mason's voice cracked. Lily, it's Mason. A small, terrified voice answered. Mason, where are you? Greg put us in the car and he was driving really fast and he was yelling and Noah's crying and the police are here and I don't know what's happening. Lily, listen to me. Listen, it's over. Greg can't hurt us anymore. There are people here, a lot of people, who came to help us. My teacher called them. They're good people. They look scary, but they're good. Pamela can't make us go back to the garage. Nobody can. You promise? I promise. What about you? Are you safe? I'm at school. Miss Bradley is with me. And there are bikers, Lily, like 100 of them. They came for us. Bikers? I know it sounds weird, but they protect kids. That's what they do. Silence. Then Lily's voice, very small. Noah won't stop shaking. He won't let go of me. Put the phone near him. Rustling. Then Mason could hear Noah's breathing. Rapid. Panicked. The breathing of a 5-year-old boy who had been torn from the only stability he knew, even if that stability was a locked garage, and thrown into a speeding car by a man who hurt him. Noah, hey buddy, it's Mason. Can you hear me? Nothing. Noah, remember the song? The one I sing when the garage gets cold? You want me to sing it? Mason started humming, low, quiet. A melody he'd made up during the first week in the garage when Noah wouldn't stop crying and Mason had nothing. No blanket, no light, no comfort, except his own voice. He'd invented a song about a bear who lived in a warm cave and had all the honey he could eat and was never, ever afraid. He hummed it now through a phone speaker in a police cruiser 14 miles away, and Noah's breathing slowed. Just slightly. Just enough. Lily's voice came back. He stopped shaking. Good, keep holding him. Don't let go. Some people are going to come get you and bring you somewhere safe. A real house with real beds. Nobody is going to lock any doors. How do you know? Because a man named Bishop promised me, and I believe him. The call ended. Mason set the phone down. He stared at the desk for a long time. Then he looked at Miss Bradley with eyes that held something new. Not fear, not exhaustion, something fierce and burning and old beyond his years. Miss Bradley, yes, sweetheart. I want to know about the 2 kids who died, the ones before us, the ones Ledger found the insurance policies on. Ms. Bradley hesitated. Mason, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Because if Greg and Pamela killed those kids and nobody stopped them, then me and Lily and Noah were next. I need to know. Bishop, who had returned to the school after Greg's arrest and was standing in the doorway listening, stepped into the room. He looked at Ms. Bradley. She looked back. A silent conversation between 2 adults about how much truth a 9-year-old could carry. He's earned it, Bishop said quietly. Ms. Bradley closed her eyes, then nodded. Bishop sat down across from Mason. 2 children. The first was a boy named Marcus, 7 years old, placed with the Hartwells in March 2020. In August 2020, Greg reported that Marcus drowned in the bathtub. The investigation found no evidence of foul play. Case closed. And the second? A girl named Danielle, 9 years old, placed in January 2022. In September 2022, Pamela reported that Danielle fell down the basement stairs. She died from head injuries. Investigation found the death consistent with an accidental fall. Case closed. Mason was quiet for a very long time then. Danielle was 9, same age as me. Yes. And she was there for 8 months. Same as me. Yes. And Greg had a life insurance policy on her. Yes. Mason looked at his hands, at the bruises, at the finger marks that mapped 7 months of being grabbed and held and hit. Then he looked at Bishop with something so far beyond 9 years old that it made the old biker's chest ache. He was going to kill me too, wasn't he? That's why the insurance policy exists. That's why they cycle kids every 6 to 8 months. They use us up, and then they get rid of us, and then they collect the money and get new kids. Nobody answered, because the answer was obvious and terrible, and no adult in that room wanted to be the one to confirm it to a child. "I'm not dead," Mason said. His voice didn't shake. "Marcus is dead, and Danielle is dead, and they can't speak for themselves. But I'm alive. And Lily's alive. And Noah's alive. And I can talk." He looked at Bishop. "I'll testify. In court. I'll say everything. Everything Greg did. Everything Pamela did. The garage, the lock, the belt, the hunger, all of it. I'll say it in front of a judge and a jury, and I'll make them listen." Bishop's eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, Mason, and I've met a lot of brave people." "I'm not brave, I'm angry. There's a difference." At 9:47 p.m., Denise Lawson called from the Hartwell residence. Her voice was different now. The professional detachment was gone. What replaced it was something raw and barely controlled. "I'm in the garage," she said. "I've documented everything. The mattresses, the deadbolt, the bucket. There are pencil marks on the wall, names and dates. I count 9 different names going back to 2018. 9 children slept in this garage." She paused, swallowed. "And I found something else, behind the water heater, a box, children's belongings, hair clips, a stuffed rabbit with the name Marcus written on the tag, a bracelet with the letter D. Marcus, Danielle, trophies. Greg and Pamela Hartwell had kept trophies. "Ms. Lawson," Bishop said through the phone, "Detective Keller from the fraud unit should be arriving at the house within minutes. He needs to see that box." "He's already here. He's photographing it now." And Bishop, the fraud charges are the least of their problems. When the district attorney sees what's in this garage, we're talking about a lot more than embezzlement. "I know. Those 2 children who died." "I know." Denise's voice broke. Just for a second. Just long enough to hear the human behind the badge. "I've been doing this job for 14 years. I've seen bad things. But this house, this family that everyone called angels, Bishop, they're monsters. And the system I work for helped them do it. Then help us make sure the system never helps them again." "I intend to." At 10:30 p.m., Lily and Noah arrived at Pinecrest Elementary in a patrol car. Denise had arranged for all 3 children to be reunited before transfer to the emergency foster placement. Mason was standing in the hallway when the front doors opened. Lily came through first, holding Noah's hand, pulling him along because his legs were wobbly and his eyes were glazed, and he moved like a child walking through a dream he couldn't wake up from. Lily saw Mason and ran. She hit him so hard they both stumbled. She wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his neck and sobbed. Deep, shaking, full-body sobs that echoed down the empty hallway. "I thought they were going to take you away," she cried. "I thought we'd never see you again. Greg said you were gone. He said you told lies and they sent you to a bad place." "He lied, Lily. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Noah stood 3 feet away, motionless, staring. His brown hair was messy. His clothes were the same ones he'd worn yesterday. He was clutching a piece of his own shirt so hard his small knuckles were white. Mason let go of Lily and knelt down. "Hey, buddy, it's me. It's Mason." Noah stared at him. "You're safe now, Noah. No more garage. No more lock. No more Greg." Noah's bottom lip trembled. Then he launched himself forward and clamped onto Mason's chest like a drowning boy grabbing a life preserver, and he made a sound. Not a word, Not a cry, something primal and wounded that came from a place no 5-year-old should know exists. Mason held him, both arms tight, chin resting on top of Noah's head, and he rocked him. The same way he'd rocked him on those concrete mattresses in that freezing garage every night for 7 months. "I got you," Mason whispered. "I got you, buddy. Nobody's locking any doors tonight." Every Hell's Angels member in that hallway, there were 20 of them, hardened men who'd seen war and loss and the worst of humanity, looked away. Not because they were too tough to cry, because they were crying. And some things are too sacred to watch head-on. Bishop walked over to Denise Lawson. "The emergency placement, where are they going?" Mark and Susan Brady, licensed 14 years, former teachers, 3 bedrooms. Ledger's people already ran a background check. They came back clean. "I want brothers posted outside that house for the next 72 hours. "That's not standard protocol, I know. Neither is any of this." Bishop looked at the 3 children huddled together on the hallway floor. "Those kids have been through hell, Ms. Lawson. Greg Hartwell is in custody, but Pamela bonded out on a signature 30 minutes ago. Until she's behind bars, those children have protection." Denise hesitated, then nodded. 72 hours, public property, no contact with the family. Done. At 12:15 a.m., a car pulled up to Mark and Susan Brady's house. 3 children climbed out. The youngest was being carried by the oldest because he'd fallen asleep during the drive, his face pressed into Mason's shoulder, his small fist gripping the collar of the faded blue denim jacket that had started everything. Susan Brady opened the front door. She looked at 3 children who were skinny and bruised and exhausted and terrified, and holding on to each other like the world would end if they let go. "Come inside," she said. "There's macaroni and cheese on the stove, and I made up 3 beds, but if you want to all sleep in the same room tonight, that's okay too." Lily looked at Mason. Mason looked at Noah, asleep against his chest. Then he looked at Susan Brady and asked the question that broke every adult heart within earshot. "Is the door going to lock from the outside?" Susan's eyes filled. She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. No locks. No doors you can't open. You're free here." Mason carried Noah inside. Lily followed, gripping the back of Mason's jacket. Behind them, 6 motorcycles idled at the curb. First shift. Watching. Ready. Mason laid Noah on a real bed with real sheets and a real pillow and pulled a real blanket up to his chin. Noah murmured something in his sleep. Mason leaned close. "Bear," Noah whispered, the first word he'd spoken in 4 hours, the name from Mason's made-up song. "Yeah, buddy," Mason said, "the Bear's Cave. We found it." He pulled the faded blue denim jacket off his own shoulders, folded it carefully, and set it on the nightstand beside Noah's bed. 59 days he'd worn that jacket. 59 days of hiding bruises and hunger and a child's quiet, furious refusal to disappear. He didn't need it anymore. Mason woke up the next morning and didn't know where he was. That was the first thing, the disorientation. The ceiling was white and clean, and there was sunlight coming through a window that had actual curtains, and somewhere in the house he could smell bacon, and his first thought was, Greg's going to be angry if we're not up before him. And his body went rigid and he almost rolled off the bed, reaching for Noah before he remembered. Noah was in the next bed, 3 feet away, sleeping. Actually sleeping, not the twitching, flinching half-sleep of the garage, but real, deep, boneless sleep, with his mouth open and one arm hanging off the mattress and the blanket kicked to the floor because he was warm enough to not need it. Lily was in the third bed, curled on her side, knees drawn up, but her face was relaxed, peaceful. A word Mason had forgotten applied to people. He sat up slowly. His ribs ached from the bruise on his left side. His arms throbbed where Greg's fingerprints were still mapped in purple and yellow. But the mattress under him had springs. The pillow under his head had been soft, and the door, he looked at the door, was open, wide open. No deadbolt, no lock, no click at 10 p.m. that meant they were sealed in until morning. He stared at that open door for a long time. Susan Brady appeared in the doorway. She didn't step in. She stood at the threshold and spoke softly. "Morning, Mason. There's breakfast whenever you're ready. No rush. Take your time." "What kind of breakfast?" "Eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice, and pancakes if you want them." "For all of us?" "For all of you, as much as you want." "Can Noah have seconds?" Susan's eyes glistened. "Sweetheart, Noah can have thirds, and fourths, and fifths. There is no limit on food in this house. That rule starts now, and it never stops." Mason nodded. He woke Lily gently. Lily woke Noah. The three of them walked to the kitchen together. Mason in front, Lily behind him, Noah holding Lily's hand, moving in the formation they developed in the Hartwell house. Mason first to check for danger, Lily in the middle to shield Noah, Noah in the back where the hitting was least likely to reach. They would walk like that for weeks before they learned they didn't have to. Mark Brady was at the stove. He turned around when they came in, and his first instinct was to step toward them with a big morning greeting, but he caught himself. He'd read the intake notes. He knew about Noah's fear of adult men. So instead, he stayed where he was, kept his hands visible, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Hey guys, I'm Mark. I made too much food because I'm bad at cooking small portions. Want to help me eat it?" Noah pressed himself against Mason's leg, but he didn't hide. That was something. They ate, slowly at first. Mason cut Noah's pancakes into small pieces the way he always did. Lily poured her own juice, then poured Noah's, then poured Mason's. The routine they'd established in the garage, where taking care of each other was the only structure they had. Susan watched them. The way Mason checked on the other two before eating his own food. The way Lily positioned herself between Noah and Mark at all times. The way Noah ate with one hand and gripped Mason's shirt with the other. She'd fostered 23 children over 14 years. She knew what love looked like when it had been forged in survival. These three children loved each other the way soldiers love the people who kept them alive. Her phone buzzed. A text from Denise Lawson. "Pamela Hartwell arrested at 6:15 a.m., attempting to board a flight to Phoenix. Passport confiscated. She's in custody." Susan read it twice. Then she set the phone down and watched Noah take a second pancake without asking permission. At 9 a.m., Doc Miller arrived at the Brady house to conduct full medical assessments. He brought his med kit, a portable scale, a blood pressure cuff, and a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man his size. He started with Mason, who already trusted him from the night before. "I'm going to check you head to toe, buddy. Anything hurts, you tell me. Anything feels wrong, you tell me. No tough guy stuff. Deal?" "Deal." Doc's findings were thorough. He dictated into his phone as he worked, keeping his voice clinical and steady, even as what he found made his hands want to shake. Mason's weight, 52 pounds. Blood pressure low, consistent with chronic malnutrition. Bruising at 7 distinct sites, 4 recent, 3 healing. 1 partially healed rib fracture on the left side, 5th rib, never treated. A scar on his right shin that was at least 3 months old, consistent with being struck with a hard object. Mild anemia, early signs of vitamin D deficiency from spending nights in a windowless garage. "How long has your rib hurt?" Doc asked. "Since February, Greg kicked me." "Why?" "Noah wet the mattress. Greg came down to punish him. I got between them." Doc closed his eyes for 1 second. 1 second to master himself. Then he continued. Lily was next. She was 8, and she was brave, and she sat very still while Doc examined her legs. 4 bruises on her left thigh, 3 on her right, 1 on her lower back shaped like a shoe print. "Pamela kicks," Lily said matter-of-factly. "When Greg uses the belt on Mason, Pamela uses her feet on me. She wears those pointy shoes. Doc documented everything, photographed everything. Lily's weight, 48 pounds, underweight, asthma that had been left unmanaged for 8 months because Pamela considered inhalers an unnecessary expense. Then Noah. Noah wouldn't let Doc touch him. He pressed himself into a corner and put his hands over his head, a protective posture that told Doc everything about what this 5-year-old had endured from adult men. Doc backed off immediately. "That's okay, buddy. We don't have to do this now." Mason knelt down beside Noah. "Hey, remember Doc from last night? He's the one with the medicine bag. He's not going to hurt you." Noah stared at Doc from behind his fingers. "Doc was a soldier," Mason said. "He helps people who are hurt. That's all he does." "His hands are big," Noah whispered, the first full sentence anyone other than Mason had heard him speak in weeks. Doc set his medkit on the floor. He sat down cross-legged, making himself as small as a 64-year-old man with creaking knees could make himself. Then he held out his hands, palms up. "You're right, Noah. My hands are big, but they've never hurt a child. Not once. Not ever. And they're not going to start today." Noah looked at Mason. Mason nodded. Noah crept forward. 1 step. 2. He reached out and touched Doc's open palm with 1 finger, like testing whether a stove was hot. "See," Doc said, "just hands." Noah let Doc take his blood pressure. Let him listen to his heart. Let him check his eyes and ears. He drew the line at being weighed. Too much contact, too much vulnerability. But Doc estimated him at 35 pounds, dangerously low for a 5-year-old. He had no visible bruises. Greg had learned from the CPS visit. He'd stopped leaving marks on the youngest child, the one most likely to be examined. Instead, the abuse was psychological. Screaming, threats, locking the garage door and turning off the light as punishment. Noah's trauma wasn't written on his skin. It was written in his silence. "This boy needs a child psychologist," Doc told Susan privately. "Not next week. Now. Art therapy, play therapy, whatever it takes to get him talking again. The longer he stays locked inside his own head, the harder it'll be to bring him out." Susan was already making calls. At noon, Bishop held a meeting at the Hells Angels clubhouse. Tyler, Ledger, Echo, Doc, Chalk, and 32 other brothers crowded into a room designed for 20. Ledger had his laptop connected to a projector. Full financial picture, 6 years, 14 foster children, total foster care payments received by the Hartwells, $680,000. Total documented spending on children in their care, $31,000. That's a 95% profit margin on human suffering. He clicked to the next slide. Little Blessings Charity. Total donations received, $120,000. Actual charitable disbursements, $18,000. The remaining $102,000 went to administrative expenses, which is code for Greg's truck payments and Pamela's wardrobe. Next slide. Life insurance policies. Marcus Delgado, age 7, died August 2020. Policy value, $75,000. Danielle Webb, age 9, died September 2022. Policy value, $120,000. Both policies purchased by Greg Hartwell within 30 days of each child's placement. The room was silent. Not angry silent, colder than that, the kind of silence that precedes a reckoning. "There's one more thing," Ledger said. He took off his glasses and cleaned them. A nervous habit from his FBI days that meant what came next was bad. "I found a third life insurance policy. Active. Current." Bishop looked up. "On Mason Riley, $50,000, purchased by Greg Hartwell 6 weeks ago." The sound that went through that room was like the low growl of an animal. Not shouting, growling. 139 men processing the fact that a foster father had taken out a death policy on a 9-year-old boy 6 weeks before that boy's teacher started counting jackets. Greg Hartwell was planning to kill that child, Bishop said. Not a question. The pattern fits, Ledger said. Place a child, collect payments for 6 to 8 months, take out insurance, stage an accident, collect the payout, request new placement. He had the system down to a science. And nobody caught it? Nobody was looking. Each child was in a different county, different caseworkers, different insurance companies. The deaths were ruled accidental by different coroners. There was no centralized database connecting foster child deaths to insurance payouts. The system wasn't designed to catch this because nobody imagined someone would do it. Echo spoke up. Detective Keller needs this immediately. This changes the charges from fraud and endangerment to premeditated murder. Already sent, Ledger said. Keller's presenting it to the DA this afternoon. Bishop stood. I want every brother in this room to understand something. Mason Riley is alive because a teacher counted 59 days. 59 days. 6 weeks from now, if nobody had noticed, that boy would have had an accident, a fall, a drowning, something that looked tragic and unavoidable. And Greg Hartwell would have collected $50,000 and requested 3 new children, and the cycle would have started again. He looked around the room. We didn't just save 3 kids last night. We stopped a killer mid-cycle. And we're going to make damn sure the evidence is so airtight that Greg and Pamela Hartwell never see daylight again. The DA's office moved fast after Ledger's insurance discovery. Within 48 hours, the charges against the Hartwells were upgraded. Felony child endangerment became attempted murder of a minor. The fraud charges expanded to include racketeering. The 2 previous deaths, Marcus Delgado and Danielle Webb, were officially reopened as homicide investigations. Greg Hartwell stopped cooperating with his attorney. He sat in his cell and said nothing. Pamela Hartwell tried a different strategy. She called a press conference from jail through her lawyer, wearing a white blouse, tears streaming, Bible in her hands. We are God-fearing people who opened our home to children nobody wanted. We are being persecuted by a motorcycle gang that intimidated our community and poisoned the authorities against us. We love those children. We would never harm them. Echo had anticipated this. Within an hour of Pamela's press conference, he released a counter package to every major news outlet in Colorado. The medical photographs, the financial records, the garage documentation, the insurance policies, the pencil marks on the wall with 9 children's names, and recorded testimony from Rachel, the former foster child who had survived the Hartwells at age 12. They starve you first. That's how they control you. Rachel's voice, thin and shaking and absolutely certain, played on every local news broadcast in Denver that evening. Pamela's press conference disappeared from the news cycle within 6 hours. What replaced it was a photograph that Echo had taken the night of the rescue. 139 motorcycles parked in formation at Pinecrest Elementary under a Colorado sunset, and in the foreground, barely visible through a window, the silhouette of a small boy pressing his forehead against the glass. The image went viral. 2 million shares in 3 days. The caption, written by Echo, 59 days someone counted, 139 showed up. Prosecutor Angela Torres called Bishop personally. Mr. Harmon, I've been prosecuting child abuse cases for 16 years. I have never had a case arrive on my desk this thoroughly documented. Your financial investigator's work is cleaner than anything my own forensic team has produced. I want you to know, these people are not getting out. Ever. That's all we needed to hear. There's something else. The insurance company that issued the policies on Marcus and Danielle has launched its own investigation. They're cooperating fully. If those deaths were staged, and I believe they were, we'll have the evidence to prove it. What about Mason's policy? Entered into evidence as proof of intent. It's the linchpin, Mr. Harmon. That active policy on a living child connects the pattern. Past deaths, present endangerment, future intent. Greg Hartwell bought a death policy on a 9-year-old boy he was actively starving and beating. That's not neglect. That's premeditation. Bishop hung up. He sat in his office at the clubhouse for a long time. On his desk was a framed photograph of Danny. Brown hair, big laugh, baseball glove in hand, alive and whole and 8 years old forever. "We got him, Danny," Bishop said to the photograph. 22 years, but we got him. The trial was set for August. Prosecutor Torres spent 3 months building her case. Ledger worked with her team daily, cross-referencing every financial record, every insurance document, every placement date. Echo compiled the media evidence. Doc and Carol provided expert medical testimony and depositions. 3 former foster children agreed to testify. Rachel drove from Wyoming. She walked into the DA's office and gave a 4-hour deposition without breaking eye contact once. "I was 12 years old, and I told the truth and nobody believed me," she said at the end. "I'm 20 now, and I'm going to say the same truth in front of a jury, and this time they're going to listen." The community shifted around the case like tectonic plates. Grace Community Church issued a statement distancing itself from the Hartwells. Pastor Davis, who had called them angels walking among us, resigned after it came out that he'd received personal loans from Greg totaling $18,000, money that had originally been foster care payments meant to feed children. The school vice principal, Randall Peters, was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into his relationship with Greg Hartwell and his failure to act on Mason's behavioral flags. His golf buddy, his church board colleague, the man who had access to a child's deteriorating file and never opened it. Ms. Bradley filed a formal complaint. Randall Peters saw that boy every day for 8 months. He saw the weight loss. He saw the same jacket. He had my behavioral reports in his inbox. And he auto-notified the foster parents when I kept Mason after class, nearly blowing the entire rescue. That's not incompetence. That's complicity. Peters hired a lawyer. The investigation was ongoing. And through all of it, the legal proceedings, the media firestorm, the community reckoning, 3 children lived in Mark and Susan Brady's house and learned, slowly and painfully, what normal felt like. Mason started sleeping through the night by the end of the 2nd week. Not every night, but most nights. He still checked the bedroom door before going to sleep, touching the handle, confirming it turned, confirming he could leave. Susan told Mark they should never mention it. "He'll stop when he's ready. Don't rush it." Lily's asthma was treated properly for the first time in 8 months. She carried her inhaler everywhere like a talisman. She started talking more, asking questions, expressing opinions. One afternoon, she told Susan she didn't like green beans, and Susan said that was perfectly fine, and Lily stared at her for 10 seconds like she'd spoken in a foreign language. Because in the Hartwell house, expressing a preference about food was punishable. Noah was the hardest, the slowest, the one who made everyone hold their breath. Dr. Rachel Kim, the child psychologist Doc had recommended, started seeing him 3 times a week. Art therapy. He drew with crayons, dark pictures at first, all black and gray, rooms with no windows, doors with big locks. But by week 3, colors started appearing. A yellow sun, a green tree, a blue figure that Dr. Kim asked about. "That's Mason," Noah said. 4 syllables, the longest sentence he'd produced in a therapy session. "What's Mason doing?" "Singing the bear song." Dr. Kim documented it as a breakthrough. A 5-year-old boy referencing safety through the metaphor another child had created for him in a locked garage. The bear song, the warm cave, the place where nobody was afraid. Mason visited the school once, in mid-June, to collect his things from room 108. He wore new clothes that fit. His hair was clean. His face had color. He'd gained 4 pounds. Ms. Bradley was grading papers when he walked in. She looked up and the tears started before she could stop them. Mason walked straight to her and hugged her, hard, the way a kid hugs someone who saved his life. "Thank you for counting," he said. She held him and cried into his hair and said what she'd wanted to say for 59 days. "You were never invisible, Mason. Not to me, not for one single day." He pulled back, wiped his eyes. "Ms. Bradley, can I have the jacket?" She looked at the faded blue denim jacket folded on her desk. Evidence returned after documentation. The jacket that had hidden everything. "Why do you want it?" "Because I'm going to give it away to a foster care place downtown with a note." "What kind of note?" "It's going to say 59 days. Someone counted, someone came. Count the days. See the kids." Miss Bradley handed him the jacket. He folded it carefully, tucked it under his arm, and walked out of room 108. He paused at the door and looked back. "Miss Bradley, you saved my life, but you also saved Lily's and Noah's, and maybe you saved the next kid too, the one who hasn't been found yet. Because when people hear this story, they're going to start counting." He walked down the hallway, past the office where Randall Peters used to sit, past the front entrance where 139 Hells Angels had stood on a May evening and changed everything, and out into the Colorado sunshine. He was 10 years old. He weighed 56 pounds. He was healing, and he was carrying a jacket that was about to become the most important piece of fabric in the state of Colorado. The trial started on a Monday in August, and Greg Hartwell walked into the courtroom like he still believed he could win. He wore a suit his lawyer had brought, blue tie, clean shave, hair combed. The transformation from the man in the orange jumpsuit to the man at the defense table was deliberate, calculated. The same performance he'd been giving for 6 years to caseworkers and pastors and neighbors. The good father, the community servant, the man who opened his home to children nobody wanted. Pamela sat at a separate table. Different lawyer, different strategy. She'd cut her hair, wore a simple blouse, no pearls this time. Her attorney had advised a humbler look. Less suburban queen, more overwhelmed mother. She kept a tissue in her hand at all times. Prosecutor Angela Torres stood up first. "The state will prove that Gregory and Pamela Hartwell operated a criminal enterprise disguised as foster care. Over 6 years, they collected $680,000 in state funds, meant to feed, clothe, and shelter 14 vulnerable children. They spent $31,000. They pocketed the rest. They locked children in an unheated garage. They beat them. They starved them. They used them as unpaid labor. And when 2 of those children died under circumstances the state initially ruled accidental, the Hartwells collected life insurance policies and requested new placements." She paused, let the courtroom absorb it. And 6 weeks before their arrest, Greg Hartwell purchased a $50,000 life insurance policy on 9-year-old Mason Riley, a boy he was actively starving and beating. The state will prove that this was not neglect. This was not overwhelmed parenting. This was a business model built on the systematic exploitation and planned destruction of children. Greg's lawyer objected to the word destruction. The judge overruled. The prosecution's case took 3 days. Torres built it like a wall, brick by brick, impossible to tear down. Doc Miller testified first. He walked the jury through his medical findings with the clinical precision of a man who had spent 55 years documenting injuries. The bruises, the rib fracture, the malnutrition, the vitamin deficiencies. He showed photographs and he narrated each one, and 3 jurors looked away, and 1 pressed her hand over her mouth. "In your professional opinion, Mr. Miller, are these injuries consistent with accidental harm?" "No, ma'am. These injuries are consistent with repeated, intentional physical abuse by an adult over a period of months." Carol Jennings corroborated. 52 pounds. Fingerprint bruising measured against an adult male hand template. Belt marks. The weight chart showing Mason's decline from September to May. A downward line that told the story of a child being slowly starved. Ledger took the stand next. He spoke for 4 hours. 4 hours of financial records, bank statements, credit card transactions, insurance policies, and charitable fraud documentation. He traced every dollar. $680,000 in foster care payments, $120,000 in charity donations, $195,000 in life insurance payouts from 2 dead children. A total of nearly $1 million flowing through the Hartwell's accounts, while 14 children slept on concrete and ate scraps. Mr. Collins, you spent 22 years investigating financial crimes for the FBI. In your professional opinion, how would you characterize the Hartwell's financial activity? This is a criminal enterprise, structured, deliberate, and designed to exploit a system meant to protect vulnerable children. The Hartwells treated foster care as a revenue stream and children as disposable assets. Greg's lawyer cross-examined Ledger for 2 hours, tried to poke holes in the numbers, suggested alternative explanations, implied the financial analysis was biased because Ledger was a Hells Angels member. Ledger didn't flinch. Sir, numbers don't wear leather vests. A dollar is a dollar whether I'm on a motorcycle or behind a desk. And these numbers say your client stole $649,000 from children who were eating rice and sleeping on concrete. The defense attorney sat down. Rachel testified on day 2. She flew from Wyoming the night before, couldn't sleep, arrived at the courthouse at 6 a.m., and sat on a bench outside the courtroom for 3 hours before the doors opened. When she took the stand, her voice shook for the first sentence. Only the first. My name is Rachel Thornton. I was placed with Greg and Pamela Hartwell in January 2019. I was 12 years old. I lived in their garage for 11 months. She told them everything. The mattresses, the lock, the hunger, the performances for caseworkers, Pamela's coaching, smile or you'll go somewhere worse, Greg's belt, Pamela's shoes, the way they made her scrub the house every Saturday while they went to brunch. I reported the abuse twice. My caseworker noted in my file that I had a history of fabrication. That note was based on a previous placement where I also told the truth and was not believed. Her voice hardened. I was 12 years old, telling the truth, and the system called me a liar. I stopped talking. I survived. I aged out. And I spent 4 years trying to forget that garage existed. Why are you here today, Miss Thornton? Because Mason Riley is 9 years old, and he told the truth, and someone finally believed him. And because Marcus Delgado was 7, and Danielle Webb was 9, and they told the truth too, and nobody believed them, and now they're dead. Her eyes found Greg Hartwell across the courtroom. I'm here because my silence let this continue, and I'm done being silent. 2 other former foster children testified. Same story, different years, same garage, same hunger, same lies. Mason's testimony was delivered via closed-circuit video. Torres had fought for this. No child should have to sit in the same room as his abuser and describe what was done to him. The judge agreed. Mason sat in a small room with Ms. Bradley beside him and a camera in front of him, and he answered every question Torres asked. Mason, can you describe where you slept at the Hartwell home? The garage. There were 3 mattresses on the floor. No sheets. The floor was concrete. There was a deadbolt on the outside of the door. Greg locked it every night at 10. What happened if you needed to use the bathroom at night? There was a bucket. Were you fed regular meals? Pamela gave us whatever was left over. Sometimes rice, sometimes crackers. Most days I didn't eat until lunch at school. I gave Noah my share when there wasn't enough, because he's 5 and he's the littlest. Mason, did Greg Hartwell hit you? Yes. How often? Whenever he was angry. 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more. What did he use? His belt, his hands. Once he kicked me in the ribs when I tried to stop him from hitting Noah. Did you tell anyone? I told the CPS lady in April. She came to the house and Pamela put us in clean clothes and moved us upstairs to the fake bedrooms and told us to smile. The lady talked to Pamela for 20 minutes and left. Did the CPS investigator interview you privately? No, Pamela was in the room the whole time. Why didn't you tell her the truth with Pamela present? Mason's voice dropped. Because the last time I told the truth at a different placement, nobody believed me and they moved me somewhere worse. I learned that telling the truth doesn't help when the adults have already decided who to believe. Torres let that sit. 5 seconds of silence in the courtroom. 5 seconds for every juror to feel the weight of a 9-year-old boy who had given up on the truth because every adult in his life had taught him it didn't matter. Mason, one more question. Were you aware that Greg Hartwell purchased a life insurance policy on you? I am now. How does that make you feel? Long pause, then steady. It makes me feel like I was never a person to him. I was a number, like a receipt, something you cash in when you're done with it. The defense presented its case on day 4. Greg's lawyer argued the Hartwells were overwhelmed, that they were good people who made mistakes, that the financial irregularities were mismanagement, not fraud, that the children were difficult, traumatized, prone to exaggeration. He put Greg on the stand. Greg cried. He talked about his faith, his church, his desire to help children. He said the garage was temporary, that they'd meant to renovate it, that the kids actually preferred sleeping together. Torres cross-examined him for 40 minutes. Mr. Hartwell, you testify that you wanted to help children. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Then why did you purchase a life insurance policy on Mason Riley 6 weeks before your arrest? Silence. Long silence. Greg's lawyer objected. Overruled. It was Pamela's idea, financial planning, in case something happened. In case something happened, like what happened to Marcus Delgado, like what happened to Danielle Webb. Those were accidents. Mr. Hartwell, Marcus Delgado drowned in a bathtub at age 7 while in your care. You collected $75,000. Danielle Webb fell downstairs at age 9 while in your care. You collected $120,000. And 6 weeks ago, you purchased a $50,000 policy on Mason Riley, a boy you were actively starving and beating. Torres stepped closer. What was going to happen to Mason, Mr. Hartwell? Nothing. Nothing was going to happen. Then why the policy? I told you, financial planning. Financial planning. Torres turned to the jury. The same financial planning that resulted in 2 dead children and nearly $200,000 in insurance payouts. The same financial planning that turned 14 foster children into revenue sources. The same financial planning that left a 9-year-old boy with a fractured rib and a 52-pound body and a jacket he wore for 59 days because you couldn't be bothered to buy him clothes. Greg Hartwell had no answer. The jury deliberated for 75 minutes. Guilty. Every count, both defendants. Pamela collapsed at the defense table. Greg sat motionless, staring at the wall behind the judge. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Richard Calloway looked at them for a long time before speaking. In 28 years on this bench, I have never encountered defendants who weaponized compassion the way you did. You used faith as a shield. You used charity as a disguise. You used the foster care system as an ATM. And you used children, 14 of them, as inventory in a business built on suffering. He turned to Greg. Gregory Hartwell, 25 years in state prison, no parole eligibility for 18 years, and I am formally recommending that the district attorney pursue first-degree murder charges in the deaths of Marcus Delgado and Danielle Webb. He turned to Pamela. Pamela Hartwell, 20 years in state prison, no parole eligibility for 14 years, full restitution of $649,000 to a trust fund for victims. The gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, Bishop stood in front of 139 motorcycles and spoke to the cameras. This isn't over. Marcus Delgado and Danielle Webb deserve justice. Their cases have been reopened, and every foster home in Colorado should know we are watching. Every chapter, every city, every child. Behind him, 139 engines rumbled. 1 year later, May 21st, 2026, the anniversary. The Hells Angels Denver chapter held a gathering at their clubhouse. Not a celebration, a vigil. Families came, former foster children came, teachers came, social workers came, people who had learned, painfully, publicly, what happens when a community chooses silence. Mason was there, standing between Mark and Susan Brady, his parents. The adoption had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. Mason Brady, Lily Brady, Noah Brady, their choice, their names, their family. Mason was 10 now, 68 pounds, honor roll, chess club, 3 friends he trusted enough to invite to his birthday. He laughed now, real laughter, unguarded, full. He still checked door handles before bed. Susan said he'd stop when he was ready. Lily was writing stories, brave girls escaping dark places, finding gardens filled with light. Her speech therapist said she'd made more progress in 8 months than most children make in 2 years. Noah was talking, full sentences, unprompted opinions, arguments about bedtime. He'd told Mark last week that he didn't like broccoli, and when Mark said that was fine, Noah stared at him for 5 seconds and then said, "You mean I can just not eat it?" Mark said yes, and Noah looked at him like he'd performed a miracle. Bishop stood at the microphone, 139 brothers behind him, community in front. 1 year ago, a teacher counted to 59. 1 year ago, a boy unzipped a jacket. 1 year ago, 139 men rode to a school and stood in a parking lot and refused to leave until 3 children were safe. He paused. My son Danny died 22 years ago. I couldn't save him. But because of what we built from that loss, Code Broken Wing, Guardian Gate, this brotherhood, we saved Mason. We saved Lily. We saved Noah. In this year alone, the Guardian Gate program has responded to 29 cases across Colorado. 29 children removed from danger. 21 abusers prosecuted because communities learned to count. Mason stepped forward. He'd asked to speak. He'd written it himself. Every word. I'm 10, he said. I'm in 4th grade. I'm on the honor roll. I have a family. I have a bed with sheets and a pillow. I have enough to eat. I have people who love me. He took a breath. But I almost had none of that. If Miss Bradley hadn't counted 59 days, if she'd looked away like everyone else did, I'd still be in that garage. Or worse, like Marcus, like Danielle. Kids whose names are pencil marks on a wall because nobody counted for them. His voice grew stronger. So here's what I want you to know. You don't need a motorcycle to save someone. You don't need 139 friends. You need eyes that see. You need a voice that speaks. You need the guts to say something is wrong, even when everyone around you is pretending everything is fine. He held up his phone. On the screen, a photograph of the faded blue denim jacket, framed and hanging in a foster care advocacy center in downtown Denver. 59 days. Someone counted. 139 showed up. That's all it took. The crowd was silent. Then, not applause, not cheering, something quieter. A murmur of commitment. People deciding in that moment to count. Miss Bradley was in the back of the room. She'd come alone. She stood with her arms crossed and tears running down her face. And she didn't wipe them away because they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a woman who had stared down a system, a church, a community of silence, and a pair of monsters wearing Sunday clothes. And she had won. Not with power, not with money, not with authority. With a notebook and a conscience, and the stubborn, furious refusal to stop counting. She keeps a photograph on her desk now. Mason at his 4th grade science fair, standing next to his project on childhood nutrition, surrounded by 6 bikers in leather vests, all of them grinning like proud uncles. The caption reads, 59 days, someone counted. And every morning when she walks into room 108, she looks at that photograph. Then she looks at her students, every single one, and she counts. Because here's the truth that Greg and Pamela Hartwell never understood. Evil doesn't fail because of motorcycles or courtrooms or prison sentences. Evil fails when one person decides to pay attention, when one teacher opens a notebook, when one child trusts enough to unzip a jacket, when one brother answers a phone call, when 139 men decide that a 9-year-old boy matters more than anything else they had to do that day. You don't need an army to change a story. You need to notice. You need to count. You need to show up. 59 days. Someone counted. Someone came. And 3 children are alive because of it. Now the question is yours. What are you counting? What are you seeing? What child in your life needs someone to finally show up? The jacket is hanging in that advocacy center. Faded blue denim, frayed at the cuffs, stained and worn thin. It's not a relic. It's not a memorial. It's a dare. Count. See. Speak. Act. 59 days. 139 engines. 3 children saved. That's how the story ends. Not with leather and chrome, with a teacher, a notebook, and the most powerful force on earth. One person who refused to look away.